Okay, let's get into this. We're doing a deep dive today on the China model,
Right.
really trying to understand its political, economic, social pillars. We're looking heavily at analysis from Zhang Wei at Fudan University.
A prominent voice, definitely. And the mission here is to unpack the system behind, well, some pretty staggering numbers.
Staggering is the word. I mean, the sources keep citing nearly 800 million people lifted out of extreme poverty.
It's huge. And responsible for, what, three-quarters of the global reduction?
Yeah.
Going from one of the poorest countries to the largest economy by PPP.
It really frames the discussion, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So this system, they call it a socialist market economy, right? Or socialism with Chinese characteristics.
That's the label, yeah.
So given that, how does the political side actually function? How is it managed?
Well, the analysis points to the Communist Party, the CPC, acting as a holistic interest party. There's this idea that it draws on centuries of tradition, almost like the old imperial civil service exams.
Interesting. So not just elections.
No, it's described as selection plus election. It's a very demanding process. The argument you hear is that this fosters competence.
Competence how? What's the evidence for that?
Well, look at the top leadership, the Standing Committee. Many of them have governed provinces, huge provinces. We're talking over 100 million people sometimes.
Right, like governing Germany or France before getting to the top job.
Exactly. So they've managed vast populations and complex economies already. That's the idea anyway.
Okay, then there's the economic dimension. It's clearly a mixed model. How does that state versus private sector thing play out?
The state holds the big strategic assets, land, minerals,
Yeah.
But crucially, it also builds the essential infrastructure, especially digital.
Like the 4G and 5G rollout.
Precisely. The sources stress getting that connectivity into every village, even really remote places like Tibet or Xinjiang. It's seen as foundational.
And the private sector then uses that foundation.
Yes, and apparently it's driven by incredibly intense domestic competition, like competition is how it's sometimes put.
Ah, so that's where the innovation engine comes from. The TikToks, the Temus, Shane, they spring out of that environment.
That's the argument. The state provides this high-quality universal platform, and the private sector competes ferociously on top of it, innovating very rapidly.
Let's shift gears a bit to the balance of power. The sources say the Chinese model tries to balance political power, social power, and the power of capital. What's the aim there?
And the key point, stressed, is that the balance has to ultimately favor the majority of the population. It's deliberately structured, they claim, not to let capital dominate.
Okay, and they contrast that directly with the U.S.
Explicitly. The view presented is that in the U.S. model, the power of capital is much stronger, with billionaires having significant political sway.
Which they say wouldn't happen in China.
That's the assertion.
No.
It would never happen in China. That level of direct influence by capital is supposedly curtailed.
This brings up the whole democracy question then. The analysis suggests moving past democracy versus authoritarianism.
Right. They propose reframing it as good governance versus bad governance.
And their version of good governance is this whole process people's democracy. What does that actually involve?
It's meant to be deeper, more continuous. So, for example, major draft laws, they mention things like family violence legislation, get sent out to these local contact centers.
For feedback.
Yes, from ordinary citizens at the grassroots level. And that feedback is apparently incorporated into the final version. It's presented as a substantive democratic check.
And this connects to their long-term planning, too, like the 5-year plans.
Absolutely. That's seen as part of the governance model. Achieving big goals, like their leadership in EVs, is attributed to that consistent long-term planning over multiple 5-year plan cycles.
Okay, looking outwards now, global competition. What's the take on the trade war?
The perspective in the sources is pretty clear. The U.S. stands to lose more.
Why?
Because of structural dependency. The U.S. economy relies heavily on China's really complex manufacturing ecosystem, getting hundreds of specific components quickly in one place.
And that ecosystem can't just be packed up and moved elsewhere overnight.
Exactly. It's not easily replicated. It takes years, decades maybe.
And finally, the financial side. We see China pushing for a multipolar world, positioning itself as a reformer. What about things like SWIFT versus their CIPS system?
Right. SWIFT is portrayed as older tech, telegram-based, essentially, high cost, and really just for messaging payment instructions.
Okay.
CIPS, on the other hand, is presented as modern, high-tech, doing actual settlement in seconds. And it's run with a sort of socialist low-cost approach.
So faster and cheaper settlement.
Yeah. And underlying this is a more fundamental belief you see in the analysis.
Mhm.
In a real crisis, having the capacity to produce goods is more solid than just holding money.
Interesting point. So wrapping this up, the final thought seems to be this contrast. China looking forward to build something new, while some Western trends, like maybe Trump's approach, are seen as looking backward.
That's the reflection offered, yeah. It contrasts China's perceived forward building with a perceived backward glance towards, say, 19th century mercantilism in parts of the West.
And it leaves us with a question, doesn't it?
It does. If China can use, say, 4 consecutive 5-year plans, 20 years to become a world leader in electric vehicles,
Yeah.
what does the West's reliance on shorter political cycles mean for tackling huge long-term challenges?
Like climate change, which needs that kind of sustained multi-decade effort.
Precisely. Can systems built around 4-year election cycles effectively manage problems that span generations? That's really the strategic question left for you, the listener, to ponder.